Alrighty. Hi, everybody. So for those of you who are coming for the first time, Buddhability is a podcast about how to believe in yourself again. So tonight, we're going to hear from 3 people about how they were able to use Buddhism to make a breakthrough in their life. So with that, I'm going to now pass it off to Cassidy.
Hello, everyone! Yay! Wow, it's so good to see you. Oh, and if you can hear in the background, that's our intro song. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you all so much for coming. We've been planning for this. We have some really incredible guests. All right, so I'm going to sit down so we can actually kind of get started. Again, thank you all so much for coming. So for folks that are kind of like newer to Buddhism or newer to Buddhability, Buddhability is started in October of 2020. So we're in our 6th year now, and we've had, for the podcast, we've had over 240 episodes, which is really incredible. So, you know, most of those, thank you, most of those are interviews with just everyday people. And this podcast and, you know, Buddhability is really just about highlighting everyday normal people, right? Those are actually like, you know, the heroes of our society. So it's people like just you and me. And the thing that they all have in common is that they practice this Buddhism. And that's kind of it. There's people from all different backgrounds, ages, you know, anything, you name it, there's a unique story. But everybody that we interview practices SGI Nichiren Buddhism. So that means we chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. And that process of chanting, we're tapping into our enlightenment. And on the show, we refer to it as Buddhability. So your ability to be a Buddha. And that looks like limitless courage, wisdom, and compassion. So everybody here today has that Buddhability in you. And when you chant, you tap into it. And as you bring that out, you can really tackle anything in your life. And so we're going to see that today with the 3 folks that we're talking to. And I'm going to bring them out one at a time. They're going to share a little bit of their story. I'll have some questions, and then we'll wrap up at the end. So thank you guys again so much for coming. So our first guest is going to be Kimberly Cadillo, and her grandmother started practicing Buddhism in Lima, Peru. So she is like from a family of women that practice Buddhism. So her mother was just 8 years old when her grandma started practicing, and then Kim moved to the US with her family when she was young, and then has spent most of her life in New Jersey. So although she grew up around many women that practiced Buddhism, she didn't really start practicing in earnest or really seriously until she was in her 20s. So now she's working as an insurance fraud investigator, which she loves. Surprising to me. And we're going to be hearing more about that. And currently, she wants you all to know that she's obsessed with her Kindle, and she sent me a photo to feature it. You'll see it in a minute. And she's really into thrillers and murder mysteries. So if you have any recs, you can give them to her afterward. So let's welcome Kim! Welcome, Kim, to
Thank you so
Buddhability.
much.
Kim was actually interviewed before maybe like a year and a half ago, 2 years. It was kind of when I first started the podcast, and like we didn't really know each other yet, and now like we've developed a lovely friendship, so I'm glad to have you back. First, I'm sure the main thing on everybody's mind is, was it always your dream to work in insurance?
No, I don't think anyone's dream is to work in insurance, but you know, it's just something that kind of, it started because I hated my other job, actually. I was so miserable that, you know, I was just really looking to find something else, more stability. So it just kind of happened that I landed in claims insurance.
Once you got there, were you like, love stability, I want to be there?
No.
Okay.
No, I just, at first, you know, I was looking for the stability. So I got a job that was extremely stable, and, you know, insurance, you know, never fails. But I just felt like that wasn't my passion. And at the time, I didn't even know, like, what my dream was, or, you know, so I just kind of happened to get a job where I was making, you know, money, and I was able to, you know, sustain myself. But it wasn't something that I really liked, but it just was something that I kind of, you know, kept me afloat.
Yeah. you would be very fortunate if the first job you had after school, you were like, I love this, it's my dream job, I'm gonna be there forever. So I think people can probably relate to that feeling of like being stuck in a job that's like, okay, well, it's like keeping me afloat, but also I don't feel like fulfilled. So when you were in that place, like, did you feel stuck? And if so, how did you get out of that feeling?
Yeah, so at the beginning, it was all nice, right? Because I was just like, yay, money. I was like, yay, I can afford to pay my bills. But then later, actually, the pandemic happened, and things just went crazy at work because people started quitting. So then when people quit, the work was put on to me because it seemed like every week someone would quit. And then I had to take over their files, and it just became so unbearing. And I just couldn't, I was like, what am I supposed to do? Should I quit? But I couldn't. I had to, continue that job. And after that whole thing happened with the pandemic, things started to get better, right? But still, people will come, and it was just like such a huge turnover. Like, people come for a month, 2 months, and then they're like, actually, we're leaving. Yeah. So it would be like a cycle,
I think maybe the version of that today for people is probably like layoffs are happening, and then you're getting, absorbing other people's work. And that sounds like a very stressful environment to be in, especially if you're not feeling like fulfilled by it. So at the time, I know you had already really started developing your Buddhist practice. So where does that come into how you tackle a job that every day you're like, this is stressful and it doesn't really fulfill me?
Yeah, so it's hard, right? When you don't like your job or you don't like what you do, like school, right? You're just like, I don't really like it. So, but you're kind of forced into it, and you just kind of have obligations. And at the time, I began to apply for new jobs, but it seemed like every week, someone left, and every week I would get rejection after rejection. And at the time, I was building my own practice, and even though like you mentioned, I was born into the practice, my family practices, but I think at that time, I just didn't know what else to do. And I said to myself, I have to give this practice a chance because I have nothing else to lose. I mean, I'm already getting rejected. I already hate my job. What's the worst thing that can happen? So I remember too, my mom who practices for a long time. So I always thought, she always used this practice, and somehow, everything kind of just turned out her way. So I said, why not me? So I began to really, practice, and I consider myself very fortunate that I have, just an amazing, Buddhist community that really supported me. And they have supported me for a very long time. I think, from the moment before I didn't even answer the phone, and they would call me and I'll be like, no. But they never stopped believing in me and supporting me. So I feel really grateful and fortunate. So they told me I could, to keep going, to not give up. And I decided to just go for it. Didn't matter, rejection after rejection, I wasn't going to give up. I knew that something bigger was coming. And at times, there were good days and bad days where I just felt like maybe this is never going to happen for me. I'm just going to be in this job forever and be miserable. But that wasn't true, Things did change.
Hence why you're here on stage. So when you say you really started practicing more, for people that aren't really that familiar with Buddhism or what Buddhist practice entails, can you give some examples of what that looked like for you?
Yeah, so I started to more involved in the Buddhist community. So meetings, I would be a part of them. I would also, really read more. We have a lot of publications, so I would read more. And something that really helped me during that time is we have what we call behind the scenes. So I supported as a young woman there, and that just really gave me so much courage, to keep moving forwards, because we all kind of share our struggles and what we're going through. And I realized, we're all kind of going through the same thing. and we're all challenging, and yet we're still here and we're smiling. But that really just gave me the push that I needed to really keep going, because I knew that we were all in this together.
I think the hardest thing is like when, you feel like you're the only one experiencing something, or if you feel like you can't share that with anyone. I mean, even in like my own life and my friendships, sometimes it can be hard to like actually break through that barrier of like what is actually going on in your life and like your internal world. Some people maybe are really open, or you have some close friends, but I think something that's really, incredible to me about this Buddhist community is that people are just like so open and embracing, and like that connection of like, oh, okay, I'm not the only one that's struggling, and I'm not the only one that's like really fighting to like change something in my life. So of course you said things did change. So did you leave the job? Is that the change?
No, I'm still there. I'm still at the company. No, actually, so basically my company, after it was a year of me like applying company after company, getting email rejection after email rejection, and then my company opened up an opportunity for employees to apply for positions within the company. So we had first pick, and it wasn't based on seniority, which most companies work like that. It was based on skill. So because I was more involved in our Buddhist meetings, also my mentor, Kimberly Cadillo, I began to read his youthful diaries, and that really just like encouraged me to just go for it. Like, have no fear, have no regrets, right? So I said, I'm gonna apply. Like, I might not have the qualifications, but I'm gonna go for it. So I did, and I actually got rejected 4 times. Like 4 times I applied, 4 times I got rejected. And then, of course, what do you think? Like, oh, I should just give up, quit immediately. But I decided like, no, I'm not gonna do that. And I just kept going forwards, and just like a random day, my supervisor at the time, she called me into her office, and I thought, oh my God, I'm in trouble. But she said, no, like there's this position that opened up, and it's for an investigator, you should go for it. And I said, are you sure? Like, I don't have any investigative background. Like, I watch like Law and Order, but I was like, does that qualify me? And she said, just go for it. Like, this is your, she really was like, this is your chance, go for it. And I did, I applied, and a week after the interview, I got an email that I got the job.
Wow. So, after like rejection, more rejection, what did that moment feel like?
Yeah, I think like after the 4 times I got rejected, I just really decided that it didn't matter, that the job, even though I didn't like it, that wasn't gonna determine my happiness. I determine my happiness. This practice really teaches us that we have the power to decide. Other people don't decide. The world doesn't decide, your job doesn't decide, your boss. So at the last time I got rejected, I remember, sitting in front of the gonzan just thinking, I'm gonna be happy regardless. Regardless if I get this job or I get another job next year, I'm gonna be happy. And I think that just shifted everything for me, because when I got the job that I have now, the interview was so chaotic too. I was like, oh, my laptop died. It was and then I got the date wrong, and it was just so chaotic. But my boss said that the reason why he chose me for the position was maybe not the qualifications, right? But it was just because I just had such a positive attitude. Like, it just looked like I was ready to be a part of a team. So yeah, I think everything changed when I decided I was going to be happy, regardless of anything else. Yeah.
Well, I feel like we can just end the podcast here.
No, there's more. Don't leave.
But I mean, that's so like, so many people that practice, right, can all say like, yeah, when I changed something in myself, then my environment really reflected that. In this Buddhism, we really believe in like basing our happiness isn't dependent on our externals, right? Like, of course we want these things and we should go for them, and they, are part of our happiness, but they're not our happiness alone. Like, you can be happy no matter what job you have. Your happiness is really something internal, which sounds like that was a really big shift for you. And now, how was it when you started? Did the Law and Order background help?
Kind of, yeah, no. I think it was just when I first started too, I just felt like, okay, like this is what I wanted and I finally got where I wanted to be, and what now, right? Like then the anxiety kind of like, how do I really deliver? I said a lot of things like, oh. But, again, I use really my practice to give it my all. Like my mentor, Daisaku Ikeda, he really always says, try your absolute best. And, don't worry so much about what other people are doing, but just really, as long as you're trying your best, there's no way anyone can say otherwise, about you. So when I started, I just, again, we believe that everything happens at the right time. And this was definitely the right time, the right job for me, because even my teammates really supported me. And my teammates are like, much older than I am. They're like my dad's age. So, at first you think like, we don't have nothing in common, but honestly, we have a lot of things in common. And, they really supported me. Like they really embraced me and showed me everything I needed to know. And because I wanted to prove to them that I wanted to be in that position and really be a team player, I just really strove like to do my best, like 1,000% in everything that I did.
What does 1,000% look like?
1,000%. 1,000% is, I never complain. I always, if they needed help with anything, I was always there, and just, kind of like being the first person there and the last person to leave. But because of that, I really earned their trust, and they knew that they can really trust me, and that's so important, when you're a part of a team. And I think we have built such an amazing friendship.
I mean, now I love all of my coworkers, but there have been jobs where I didn't love my coworkers. So, that makes such a difference, like people that you can really trust. But it sounds like, of course, there are people that are incredible, and you're the kind of person that has also gained their trust. And like, I think that relationships anywhere really start with us. You showing up to be like, I'm going to really show up for my team, then they, reflect that back to you, it sounds like. So maybe I have one more question. And I also know that you have some accolades that you can share from work, so you should do that. But I'm wondering, just what you would say to anybody that's like listening that is currently like, yeah, that's nice for you that you could find this job, but I'm really stuck here and I hate it and I don't know what to do.
Yeah, actually, I was one of those people, like I would sit in an audience and I would hear, like, in the Buddhist community, we share, about our struggles and our victories. And I would sit there and think, like, yeah, that could never be me. But I think that it's hard to kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel when you're really going through, like, a rough time. And, especially with work, because sometimes it's a necessity, it's something that you have to absolutely do. But I think, if you give this a try, and see your potential and what you can really do, and how many people really believe in you, I think sometimes it's us. Like, it's not so much like, the job, but it's really that we just don't believe that we can really achieve something great. And so to a person who's really struggling with work, I would say that, that's not going to be your place forever. So just know that, you can always change it. And it's only up to you, actually, to do it, which I know is scary, but it's definitely possible.
Thank you, Kim.
Yes, thank you.
And very briefly, before I introduce our next guest, I want you to share your victories and accolades at work.
Oh, yes. Okay. So within my first year at work, we worked like cases, right? So during that time, I was assigned a case, and, no big deal. I was like, yeah, okay, I could do this. But then it turned into something really major, something that involved like more than like, I would say 20 cases. And I was new, and I thought to myself, how am I gonna do this, But I thought this is the perfect opportunity to show, like, that I'm part of this team, I can do it. And I was surprised, but my supervisor said, we're not going to reassign it to somebody more senior because he's like, I believe in you. And I said, well, you do? I was like, that's great. So that's when I really used my practice to really give it my all. And because of that, it really turned into something really great for my company. We were actually able to stop the person who was, committing the fraud. And I even got an apology from him. He apologized to me and my company for, everything that he done. I was like, oh, wow, that's great. And through that, I was able to, present in a conference, and actually my investigation and another coworkers that helped me out. We won Investigation of the Year, and then we also won. I won Investigator of the Year. So, yeah, yes, thank you.
Wow. We have an insurance celebrity here with us.
No.
That's so huge. I mean, it's like going from I really don't want to be here to I'm going to be happy no matter what to wow, now I'm at this big new role and I've won, Investigator of the Year. What a expansion of your life. And I think we were talking about this just before that man, you just never really know where your life is going to be or the kind of person that you can become. And when you're in it, it feels like there's no way out. And then when you get on the other side, you're like, wow, I don't even remember that person anymore, So anyway, thank you so much for sharing, Kim.
No, thank you. Thank you.
So now we're going to bring in our next guest, who is Tom Hatton. So I'm going to give his bio before I cheer him on to come in. So you will hear that Tom is originally from England, but he came to New York to pursue acting, and he studied at the Lee Strasberg Institute, which I Googled today and found out is across Union Square. So if you want to walk by afterward, you can. He was introduced to Nichiren Buddhism by somebody that he met at an audition, who actually, that person also knows Kim, we found out. And he's been practicing with the SGI since 2010. So he decided to start practicing when he was struggling to maintain his visa status in the US. And so that's something, we're going to talk about more. And I think some folks in the audience may currently have that struggle. But now he's really gone on to apply his performance training by starting his own soccer education business, and has also started a career in real estate. And he's working on a leading team for Brown Harris Stevens. So let's welcome Tom! Yay, Tom! Thank you so much for coming. Tom is also a friend of mine. That will be a trend here. Coming to New York for an acting career is huge, and I think is a pretty common experience in New York. Not mine, but I imagine it's pretty common. So how did you start your career after acting school, and what was it like entering that landscape?
So yes, I joined an acting school somewhat against my parents' best wishes in England, and embarked on 2 years of training, which was fairly kind of comfortable, right? You're sort of in this sphere of protection. And then, graduating, I realized, wow, this is the big wide world, and I have to actually get work. And, far from sort of being that warm, fuzzy feeling of school, the reality of New York City in, I think it was 2008, was, it's very challenging. And I realized that I wasn't good at auditions as well, so that was kind of a double header.
It's a big part.
Yeah, I was just always trying to please the casting agent, and I just wasn't very well versed at it. I have an economics background, so it was kind of a very different landscape.
Yeah, big pivot.
Yeah. So just overall very challenging.
In the midst of this challenges, somewhere in there you were introduced to Buddhism, right? This was after you finished school. So when you got introduced, why were you interested in Buddhism?
So I was not just an actor, I was an out of work actor. And that's the worst kind of actor to be. And I was also facing immigration challenges, right? Because you graduate from a student situation and you're on this kind of extended visa for 6 months, and then you got to book work. So I was just desperate to somehow stay in the country. I knew I didn't want to go back. But at the same time, I was like, man, how do I actually move forward? So it was around this time I met someone at an audition, and they were just shining, something about their behavior that attracted me, and found out that they actually practiced Nichiren Buddhism. And so I was invited to a meeting, and the first meeting I went to, they said, you can chant for anything you want. And, being British, we're not encouraged to do things that we really want. It's like, it's not polite to do that. And so I was like, wow, this is revolutionary. I can actually want something and try and get it. And so I remember sitting there chanting. My mind sort of wandered quite a bit. But afterwards, I just felt like this courage that I hadn't got before. And so I sort of used that as a springboard forward.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are like, really? I can just chant for anything? And oftentimes if maybe you're familiar with meditation or, other forms of Buddhism, it's really about detaching from the things that you want. When this Buddhism says, go for it, that actually helps you reach enlightenment. So as you, started up your practice and you're really struggling with the, impending visa challenges, what happened? Did you start booking gigs and then you could get a visa? I also don't really know how the visa process works if you're an out-of-work actor.
Yeah. So there's various visas you can get. The artist visa is sort of like the entry-level visa for artists in the US, and that requires a body of work, but it's temporary. So what I really wanted was the green card, right? And so I was chanting for that. And so I got some level of work, and I applied, and I was like, this is great, this chanting's amazing, right? And then I was denied. And so I was just stuck, basically. I had no understanding of how I could move forward because you're restricted to only working in the arts. And I just knew I didn't want to go back. So, I started studying Nichiren Buddhism for the first time, really from my heart. And, I'd studied from my head before, and that sounded nice, like world peace, that sounds nice. But when it came to a real obstacle like this, I was actually forced to actually study deeply. So one of the key topics was never give up, right? Never give up. So I found a new lawyer. And I said, okay, so here's my work. What do you think if we reapply? And they said it's pretty good, but I think what you need to do is to become a star. And I said, what kind of star? What are we talking about here? And she said, well, like Harry Potter or James Bond. Both British. And so I sort of nodded and then went home that night. I was like, that's something to chant about. So I did chant about it.
It's interesting, both of your stories so far, I think in both similar ways, sort of up against what seems like a structure that is immovable. And I think visa is really just feels very opaque. And so as you were chanting about okay, well, I guess I need to become a star, did you start feeling okay, I'm gonna be a star and now I'm gonna, did you have that kind of vision?
No.
Okay.
No, so it's interesting. It's like when you chant, right, you get wisdom, right? And that wisdom is something that's not intellectual. It's something from the depths of the universe, ultimately, right? The depths of your life. And that's known as the strategy of the Lotus Sutra. In this wisdom, I thought, if I can't be a star, like Harry Potter or James Bond, maybe I could surround myself with stars. And maybe that can kind of tip the balance, right? So one job that I'd done that involved that was being a red carpet interviewer. So I'd done that gig just as a sort of a one-off, and it was fun. I met Julianne Moore, met a couple of other celebs, and it was good. It got a lot of coverage. So I thought, okay, well, maybe I can do that again. The other thing that happens when you chant is you get the courage to take action, because wisdom alone is, great, theoretical, but the courage is the key thing to drive you forward. So I basically just like went out and tried to meet as many people that I thought would help me get on the red carpet. So I met an editor of a very niche magazine, sort of an urban New York magazine, and for some reason he thought I'd be a good guy to put on the red carpet and be the host of this magazine.
Wow.
So that was really being at the right place at the right time.
Yeah, I think this is such a lovely applause crowd. I think so many people that practice Buddhism have experienced that sort of, I didn't know this person was gonna like sort of come into my life and be the right connection that I need to accomplish this thing. But really, like as you chant, you're putting your life in rhythm, with the universe. So not to sound too like hippy dippy, but that's the truth, that's the reality. So you were able to like find this person who was able to get you there. So then as you're looking toward your green card, was it seeming like more and more like a reality that could happen?
Yeah, I mean, one other aspect that I didn't mention is that to get this gig, I offered to do it for free.
Wow.
And also edit and produce it.
Oh, wow.
So,
you had grit.
That was the wisdom too, because I don't think I'd have done it otherwise. And I just went on a spree of interviews for the next 18 months.
Wow.
And I got to meet like my heroes and, some of the biggest stars of the time. I enjoyed it, and I got quite good at it as well. It was like, oh my God, this is cool. Actually, I could see myself, I could believe in myself as this person. And, I wasn't playing a role. I didn't have lines, so to speak, like in the theater. I was actually just being myself. And so that actually led to a news organization approaching me and asking me to be their TV host. As this kind of went on, I started to just think, maybe I could do this green card thing. Maybe I'm gonna like persuade them that I'm a star. And so, I applied, and in 2016, I got my green card.
Wow! As I was preparing for today and thinking, I was like, if you wanted to be an actor and then that didn't end up being the route, were you really discouraged by that? But it sounds like actually you found the thing that really was the fulfilling and exciting thing to do. Is that the case?
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many times I thought I'm not good enough or this isn't for me. And it was actually, the fortune was that I didn't have any other choice, right? I think when we do have ways out, then we often take the easy way out. But in this situation, I really had no other choice but to go forward and also deeper into my faith, right? So, I chanted for, a certain time period during the day, but I really upped that chanting because I was serious about it. I also introduced Buddhism to people, and I also studied more. So through that, I was just able to navigate this pathway, which became, sort of my biggest weakness became my biggest strength in a way.
And I know now you had another status change, I'll say, recently. You're a U.S. citizen?
Oh, yeah, I became a U.S. citizen. Yeah. So that was in 2024, I became a U.S. citizen, or a dual citizen of England. Wow. And that was just the end of a very long journey. But the real benefit, that was a huge benefit, but the benefit was the process along the way of just becoming a much more confident person, honestly. Yeah, I think
that's the theme with you guys, and so many folks that I speak to is the getting the end thing is yes, incredible, and the kind of person that you become throughout that process is really because then nobody can take that from you. Even if you lose the job, you're still that person. That's the thing that I love most and appreciate most about this practice. So I'm glad you're highlighting that today. So I think now we'll bring out our last guest, Marco Giannavola. I had to ask him beforehand to make sure I was pronouncing his name right, and I did pronounce it right. So Marco is our last guest for the evening. He grew up in Connecticut, and he's been living in New York City for the past 15 years. He makes his living as a full-time photographer, which I don't know anything about the industry, but I imagine it's very challenging. And Marco's had the opportunity to work alongside some of the most acclaimed photographers in the business. He cut his teeth working as a member of Annie Leibovitz's in-house photo team, giving him an up-close and detailed understanding of the nuts to bolts photographic process of one of today's greats. With a keen interest in how people shape themselves inside the systems of fashion, labor, power, and technology, Marco documents modern American identity using a familiar visual language, code, and cues of the photographic tradition. So you can find Marco's work in places like the New York Times, the New Yorker, and also on the Buddhability website. So now we can welcome Marco. Yay, Marco. Thank you for joining. So your story is like a little bit different than the other two. Like for both of you, there's like an aspect of career, and for you as well. But your story is much more about your family and like a sense of purpose in your career. So I'm wondering if you can give us, just some context. Tell us about your life growing up and your relationship with your parents.
It's very complicated.
Yeah, we're going to do the Spark Notes version.
Spark Notes version. So yeah, I grew up in Connecticut. My parents split when I was young, about 4. My mom remarried, and my stepfather was just awful. Yes, to say the least, just awful. And when I was a junior in high school, he passed away. And so I really didn't know how to process that as someone in high school. And instead of, maybe going to therapy or grieving in some healthy way, I was like, oh, well, I'm sad and I shouldn't feel sad, so let me just be angry instead. And so that began just years and years and years of building up this very thick callus, on my heart. I remember someone once described me in college as when Marco walks in the room, all of the air gets sucked out, so very much like a dark cloud. And then so in between, my biological father leaving and, my mom remarrying, I was primarily raised by my mom, single mother. And then after, my stepfather passed away again, it was just, the two of us. My father, I saw up until I was about, 10 or so, and kind of typical every other weekend type of thing. And then, at some point, around, about when I was 10 or 11, just stopped hearing from him. Didn't see him, didn't talk on the phone, and, I don't remember being like, oh man, what is going on? Where's my dad? Whatever, that type of thing. It was more like, okay, well, I love my mom. I have such an amazing relationship with my mom. I was like, well, I have my mom, so that's good enough. And yeah, that was kind of the Spark Notes version of that.
That was a really incredible Spark Notes version, very emotionally present, and I think gives us all a sense of your background. So I know you have now been in New York 15 years, and I think you were in New York when you were introduced to Buddhism. So as somebody that had this sort of calloused heart, what about Buddhism was interesting to you?
Actually, nothing, honestly speaking. I had a roommate that was like, oh, do you want to, chant? And I was like, no. No, thank you.
Good.
I'm good. I'm really okay. And yeah, he was kind of just persistent. And I was just like, okay, cool. Thanks, man, but I'm good. And, it really came down to, I don't know, I was just having, a really bad day, at work, so I graduated school, I came to the city, I started working for a photographer. That photographer was very difficult to deal with day to day, just would complain and just, he'd get an email that he didn't like and he would throw the keyboard across the room and just totally negative and all this stuff. And, it was just a lot to deal with, especially as someone who grew up with an unstable parent, where things would fly across the room at dinner, it was a little bit what am I doing? What am I doing here? Like, again, why is this in my life again? I'd come home and just complain. And my roommate at the time was just like, you just come home every day and just complain. He's like, that's all you do. Does that like make you happy? Like, is that fun for you? And I was like, no, it sucks. And there was especially bad day where I was like really just like going off the rails. And he's like, you're gonna come in here and we're gonna chant a little bit. And he just shared with me like, you're born as this amazing, awesome person, okay? And then all the things of life happen and you forget how awesome you are. And chanting is a way to remember how awesome you are. And that, for whatever reason, was like in such simple terms that I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's kind of cool. All right, works for me. And so, we chanted and I felt better. And then, then I was like, okay, yeah, sure, I'll chant with you in the morning, or I'll come to an activity or whatever. As someone who is just like hyper competitive, I would work and I would come home and I would look at pictures and I would like read about photography and I would like just study or replicate things that we had done the day before. And I was like, well, like, I'm doing all this stuff. Other people are doing all this stuff as well. But like, if I can do all this stuff and I can like work on myself to like be a better person, then that will get me ahead. And that like sort of selfish thing initially is what drove me forward. I was like, oh, well, if I chant, then I don't feel like crap. And then that means I can do better at work. And that means I can be more energetic after work. And that means I'll get further ahead.
I mean, that is what happens, like as you're chanting, like your state of life is different, right? Like the way that you interact with other people, the way that you feel about yourself, about the world around you changes. People recognize that. They see that like behavior, that part of your life. So as you're like, have this selfish vision in mind of, okay, I'm gonna, I'm already doing all of these things, now I'm adding in this Buddhist practice. Did you like stay in your work environment? Did you like try and leave? Did you change the work environment?
Yeah, I think as I really like began my practice and was, chanting, regularly, I started to feel like, okay, I can do more. I can. There's more that I can do. There's more that I can learn here, and I kind of arbitrarily set like a deadline for myself. And I was like, okay, by this date, I want to leave my full-time job, which I made no money at. Like I think about it now, I think I made like $1,000 a month, which is like crazy, but somehow I pulled that off, for like 3 years.
That's encouraging.
Well, yeah, I don't know. It was, I have a lot of grit, I guess, to be able to do that.
Yeah.
But, I decided, okay, I'm going to go freelance. I want to work with bigger photographers. I want to like learn more. I want to sort of move more into the realm of doing, portraiture for magazines or celebrities, fashion, blah, 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 that type of thing. And so I just, set a goal. I was like, this is my goal. I'm going to hit it somehow. And I didn't know how. I didn't know what I need to do. I was like, I don't know anybody in the industry. There's all the logical things of like why this is not a good idea. And I just said, well, I don't care about what that is. Somehow I'm going to figure this out and make this work. And I just chanted. I'm going to just, I would focus like, I'm surrounded by the best people in the industry. And that was really the image that I wanted to like drill into my head. And then I think like from there, kind of like what Tom said, the sort of wisdom or the courage came out, and I started to talk to other people and say, oh, I'm going freelance, by this date, after here I'm going to be freelance, if you need anything, let me know. The first photographer that I freelanced for was this Italian photographer who hired me because he thought I spoke Italian, which I don't well, so we had just, gone through over emails, but, but like, literally like a week before my deadline, I think I had booked like a full month of work, like working every month for different clients. It was just incredible. I sort of said, this is what's going to happen. I don't know how it's going to happen, but there's no way that's not going to happen. And then just through a natural course, my life went in sort of that direction through the conversations that, I was able to have with people.
And, bringing this now to the family part, and people are probably like, where is that? Why is that, why do we talk about that? I know that like as all of this momentum was building, then something in your family really like kind of shifted or shook you. So if you can, share that.
Yeah. So, all the while, chanting about work, right? But, Buddhism is amazing because it doesn't really matter what the thing is that you're chanting about, your life will grow in all realms, So clearly my life was like I was becoming more capable, or I was being more courageous, and I was doing a lot of activities, supporting sort of different meetings, within the community, here at the Culture Center, it had introduced a few of my friends to the practice. Clearly my life was growing in ways I couldn't imagine. And like the week or so before I was starting this freelance job, I was home and my mom called me and she's like, okay, I have some weird news to share with you. I was like, okay, what's up? And so I have a half sister, from my biological father and his previous marriage. She had reached out to my mom to say that my father had passed away. And so here I am sitting in my room like, okay, how am I supposed to feel about this? So, and it was just like such a shock. And I was like, I have no idea what to do. And she's like, oh, by the way, the funeral is in like 3 days. I immediately, sort of, it was like, okay, well, I'm just going to chant about this because I have no idea what to do. Here is someone that is my father, but is not someone that I had spoken to now in 15 years. And so I was like, how am I supposed to feel? I feel sad because he's my father, and I feel sort of conflicted and like ambivalent because I don't have a relationship with him, and I just didn't know what to do. And I remember talking to a number of my friends, in the community, and they were like, if you just let this go and you just say whatever, they're like, you're gonna regret it later on in your life. And I was like, okay, you're probably right. I chanted a lot about like how to show up, there. Something that, Daisaku Ikeda has written about is like this idea of like being like a lighthouse, someone that practices, this Buddhism can be like a lighthouse for other people, to illuminate the darkness. And I thought about my dad's family, and I had no relationship with them at all either. Other than I sort of kind of knew my half-sister, but the whole rest of the family, it's a huge Italian family, I had no idea about. And I just thought, okay, well, these people are going to be suffering way more than I am. So why don't I go and, just be like a pillar, and really be like a shining lighthouse, for my family. And, this is something that I would never, ever, have done before, pre-Buddhist, calloused heart, but really like, through just the process of chanting, kind of was slowly stripping away, this callous that I could have so I could think about other people. Went to the funeral, and, I look like almost exactly like my father, especially when he was, in his mid-20s when, so when my father passed. And it was like a movie. I mean, I walked into the funeral home, it was all full, and like literally gasps and then silence. And then like, oh, and also my father's name is Mark, so I'm a junior. So it's like, just whispers of like, oh, that's Mark's son, or that's Mark Jr., or whatever. And it's like, oh, walking in to this funeral home, open casket, like just totally wild. And it was very difficult, but really going through that process, I was able to really hear both really positive things about my father and really negative things about my father from my half-sister. So I was able to really have a picture of who this person was. And, and the positive things was always very outgoing and would make people feel at home and was sort of loud and the life of the party. And I was like, oh, okay, I can kind of like relate with some of those things. And the negative things were like, just big Italian man, bravado, type of that, arrogant, that type of thing. And, I had learned that when I stopped hearing from him, it wasn't just that he decided that, but he actually had totally stopped communicating with my entire family.
Wow.
And, after 9/11, he, had a printing and publishing company down in Lower Manhattan. One of his largest clients was in the World Trade Center. So after that, his biggest client goes away. He, had to file for bankruptcy, and basically learned that he just couldn't take he couldn't take that failure. He couldn't move on from that failure. And I realized, like, oh wow, there's such a connection that I have with my father, even if I wasn't raised by him, because I could think back to when I was thinking about working, like, in the back of my head, I was like, oh well, like, I would rather like disappear than not succeed at my goals. That was my mindset. And just hearing that, I was like, holy crap, like, I can really go one way or the other. And if I really don't challenge this ego that I have, or this, whatever, this calloused heart that I have, then I could very easily go the same exact way as my father and just disappear, and just disappear from everyone that I know. And, I just decided I don't want to do that. And being able to leave, I felt like, wow, like, I had empathy for him. I really felt a sense of like, now it's not just about I want to be the best and I want to be the most famous or I want to make the most money. It's like I really want to be successful, like, on behalf of my father. And that, like, leaving the funeral, like, I just felt so like victorious.
Wow.
To have that thought. I was like so energized, and that was such a huge victory. It was amazing. And I think from that moving forward, like, yeah, whenever things have gotten rough, it's like I think about, who are all the people that have supported me along the way, or who are the people that I really like owe it to achieve my dreams. So yeah, having that has just been like infinitely powerful, because like you can only do so much out of like your own wants.
Yeah.
And to have like a really powerful why and have it be like, oh, well, I want to do it, on behalf of the people who supported me. I want to do it on behalf of the opportunities I've had. I want to do it on behalf of my father or to make my mom proud. It's just been a total game changer in terms of like how I operate and what I bring, to everything that I do.
Thank you for sharing. I mean, something that we kind of briefly discussed earlier is oftentimes people think about like a death of a loved one as sort of the end of your relationship with them, but Buddhism says no. You can really continue that relationship, and it's really incredible that, at least how I'm hearing, like, after he passed, the like depth of your relationship, really changing. And now him becoming part of your life in a really like profound and meaningful way. Looking back now, that like since that time, do you still have that same connection to your dad today when you think about your purpose, or is it, has it morphed into something new?
No, I think that, it's there. I mean, I think that, there's an amazing thing about when you chant, like, it doesn't matter what you're chanting about. It could be, oh, I want to be really rich, or I want to like have a fast car, or I want to like really hot partner, or whatever it is. The amazing thing about this is, like, as you mentioned, like when we're chanting, we're like calling forth this Buddhability, or this like best version. So in a sense, like our like desires are also like purified. So in the hard times, absolutely yes. Doing it for my father, doing it for all these people, doing it for, everything is a part of it. I think also it, kind of transformed my own goals. It was not just, I want to be the best. It was like, oh, I want to be the most famous photographer. And it was like, well, what does that mean? And it's like, well, I want to be the most, sought after. And it's like, well, why? And so I think that like over time, it kind of made me think, go deeper and deeper and deeper. And now it's gotten to a place where like, okay, well, we live in such an incredible time in history, and I want to really be able to photograph and leave a record of like, what are the people, what is this time, that we're living through look like. And I really, want to do that to be able to inspire, future, photographers, young artists to really go after what they want to do. And I think, to be able to reach a certain level and say, well, yeah, I wouldn't be able to do it without my Buddhist practice, then allows, many other people, to hear about this thing and really see that as an inspiration for them to really challenge their own dreams or whatever it is that they want to break through.
Thank you, Marco. Wow. So now, if you've ever listened to the podcast, you know that I end asking a piece of advice. So before we close out, I'm going to ask each of you what advice you would give to somebody listening that maybe is curious about Buddhism, wants to start, whether it's a piece of advice or something that, they should have in mind. So if anybody wants to start.
I can start. I think, connecting to someone that you trust and just asking a lot of questions, right? And if that person, doesn't necessarily call you, you keep on them and call them. But yeah, most of all, really connecting to someone that you trust. And then in turn, they can introduce you to other people in the community as well.
Great. Thank you, Tom.
I would say not overly intellectualizing it. Like with anything that you're going to practice, the practice part is the most important thing, right? And not getting caught up in is this perfect, or do I have this full understanding of what this means, or have I read these countless things. You don't need a PhD in Buddhism to try this, but yeah, I say don't over intellectualize it. Just give it a go, and then learn as you go. And then find something that you can kind of grab onto, whether it's some sort of piece of writing or whatever, and then study that and find something similar and kind of go from there. But really, just doing it is the most important thing, I think.
Yes, as a overthinker, that's a good one for me still. So Kim, you want to share?
Yeah, I think for me, I would just say that you can actually put this to the test. You can practice, and if it doesn't work for you, it just doesn't work, right? But at least you tried it. But I think if you really try it, it can really change your life. I truly believe that if you just give it a go, you can really live the life that you always dreamed of, I would say, yeah.
Thank you. All right, thank you all so much. Thank you to our wonderful guests, Marco, Kim, and Tom. And thank you all so much for coming. This has been our Buddhability Live.